Have you ever poured your soul into building a life with someone, only to realize you were living in a house you didn't recognize? Have you ever looked at the person sleeping next to you and seen a stranger, a gatekeeper to a world you were suddenly locked out of? For Alara, that moment didn't arrive in a thunderous crash of revelation, but in a quiet, chilling refusal. It was a Tuesday night, mundane and ordinary, the air thick with the scent of roasted chicken and rosemary. Mark, her husband of 10 years, was scrolling through his phone, a thin pane of blue light separating him from her, from them. His thumb moved with a familiar, rhythmic flick. "Honey," Alara began, her voice casual as she wiped her hands on her apron, "my phone's in the other room charging. Can I use yours to look up that recipe for the lemon tart? The one for the Sterling dinner on Friday." It was a simple request, the kind she had made 1,000 times before. But Mark's reaction was anything but ordinary. His entire body tensed. He didn't just pull the phone away, he snatched it, clutching it to his chest like a sacred relic. His smile vanished, replaced by a tight, defensive line. "No," he said, the word a shard of ice in the warm kitchen. "My phone is for work. It's private. The word hung in the air between them, ugly and sharp. In 10 years, nothing had ever been private. They had shared dreams, fears, bank accounts, and a bed. They had built a life on the bedrock of transparency. Now, a 6-inch screen had become a fortress, and she was the enemy at the gate. Alara could only stare, the recipe forgotten. The shock was a cold wave, dousing the warmth of the evening. It wasn't about the phone, not really. It was about the look in his eyes, a flicker of panic, of guilt, quickly masked by annoyance. It was the sudden, brutal construction of a wall in the heart of their home. She saw the man she loved retreat behind it, leaving her alone in the wreckage of what she thought they had. The seed of doubt, once a microscopic speck, was planted. And in the chilling silence that followed, it began to grow. The days following the phone incident were a masterclass in deflection. Mark was a changed man, but not in the way Alara had hoped. He became suffocatingly attentive, a whirlwind of feigned affection designed to distract and disarm. He brought home peonies, her favorite, their pink petals a stark, cheerful lie in the tense silence of their living room. He would praise her dinner with theatrical enthusiasm, call her beautiful as she got ready for bed, but his eyes never truly met hers. His touch felt like a performance, a gesture meant to placate a restless audience of one. The phone, the catalyst for this strange new chapter, was never mentioned. It became a silent, ever-present third party in their marriage. It was always face down on the counter, a dark, unreadable monolith. It would vibrate, and he would angle his body away from her to read the message, his shoulders hunched in a posture of secrecy. The late-night work calls began, his voice a low, urgent whisper from the spare bedroom. The door clicked softly shut. "It's the Sterling promotion," he'd say with an exasperated sigh if she asked. "The pressure is immense, Alara. You wouldn't understand." He used his ambition as a shield, a justification for his sudden distance. He made her feel as though her questions were an intrusion, her suspicions a burden on his ascent to greatness. Alara found herself caught in a torturous internal debate. Was she becoming the suspicious wife she'd always pitted in movies? Was the stress of his job really so immense that it had transformed him into this guarded, secretive stranger? She would lie awake at night, tracing the timeline of their love in her mind, from the easy laughter of their first date to the shared promise of their vows. He had been her champion, her partner. The memory of that man fought a desperate war against the evidence before her. She clung to the hope that this was a temporary madness, a side effect of his ambition. She told herself to trust him, to be the supportive wife he needed, even as the cold dread in her gut warned her that she was not just being supportive, she was being a fool. Alara was the unseen architect of Mark's perfect life. Long before he was a candidate for vice president, she was the one with the promising career in graphic design, her portfolio brimming with innovation and a keen aesthetic eye. But when Mark's star began to rise at the prestigious financial firm Sterling and Company, they had made a choice together. He would be the spearhead, the one who climbed the corporate ladder, and she would be the foundation, the one who made everything else possible. She had set aside her own ambitions without resentment, believing they were building a single, shared dream. She became a virtuoso of domesticity and support. She managed their finances with shrewd intelligence, turning Mark's healthy salary into significant wealth through careful investment. She curated their social life, hosting flawless parties that made Mark look like a man of effortless grace and taste. She was the ghostwriter of his success, her work visible everywhere but credited nowhere. Now, all her skills were focused on one single event, the dinner for Mr. Sterling. It was the final, critical test. Mark had told her for weeks, "Everything has to be perfect, Alara." Sterling is old school. He believes a man's home life reflects his professional character, so she poured herself into the task, a general preparing a battlefield. She designed the evening like a campaign. The menu was a delicate balance of classic and modern, impressive but not ostentatious. The wine pairings were sourced from a boutique vineyard she had discovered, a subtle nod to their discerning taste. The house was immaculate, every surface gleaming, every flower arrangement a testament to her quiet artistry. Yet, as she polished the silver and folded the linen napkins, a profound sense of dramatic irony washed over her. She was meticulously constructing the stage for his greatest triumph, all while her heart was breaking with the knowledge that it was all built on a lie. Every perfect detail felt like another layer of deception, another beautiful thread in a tapestry of betrayal she was only just beginning to see. She was building the altar upon which he would be celebrated, even as she suspected he had already sacrificed their marriage upon it. The moment of truth arrived not with a confession, but with a careless mistake. Mark was in the shower, the percussive spray of water a familiar sound in their quiet morning routine. He was humming a confident, off-key tune that grated on Alara's raw nerves. He had left his laptop open on the mahogany desk in their study, a rare oversight. Usually, it was shut and locked, another digital fortress she was not permitted to enter. But today, it was open, awake, and tethered wirelessly to his phone. As Alara passed the doorway, a flash of movement on the screen caught her eye. A blue notification banner slid down from the top right corner. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a message. And the name displayed was not Mr. Sterling or a colleague, but one she had never seen before, Julia. The preview text that followed was a gut punch, knocking the air from her lungs and the strength from her legs. "Can't wait to celebrate with you tonight, my VP. Just us, my VP." The words burned into her memory, a brand of searing confirmation. It was real. All of it. The whispers, the late nights, the averted eyes. She was not paranoid. She was a casualty. The pain was a physical entity, a crushing weight on her chest. For a moment, she felt the floor might give way beneath her. She saw herself as a fool, the last person to know, the naive wife playing her part in a farce. The humiliation was as sharp as the betrayal. But then, something shifted. The hot tears of grief cooled into a chilling, diamond-hard resolve. This was the moment her arc truly began. Her past life, her forgotten career, surged forward. She was not just a homemaker. She was a designer, a problem solver, a person who understood systems. She looked at the laptop, at the cloud icon in the menu bar indicating a seamless connection between all of Mark's devices. A plan, audacious and terrifying, began to blossom in the ruins of her heart. She would not be erased. She would not be a footnote in his success story. He had used her talents to build his world. Now, she would use hers to show him, and everyone else, what it was truly made of. Alara knew a direct confrontation would be futile. Mark was a master of spin, a corporate charmer who could talk his way out of anything. He would deny, he would twist her words, he would weaponize her emotions against her, painting her as hysterical and insecure. He would gaslight her until she questioned her own sanity. No, a quiet, tearful showdown was not the answer. What she needed was not a confession, but a reckoning. She would not allow this betrayal to remain a secret, a private shame she would be forced to carry alone. The truth, she decided with a terrifying clarity, deserved an audience. She spent the rest of the day in a state of strange, focused calm. On the surface, she was the perfect hostess. She basted the roast, she chilled the champagne, She arranged the centerpiece of white hydrangeas. Her hands were steady as she prepped a delicate béarnaise sauce, the rhythmic whisking a soothing counterpoint to the storm in her mind. But in between these domestic tasks, she was a strategist plotting her counteroffensive. She sat at her own computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She wasn't just a scorned wife, she was a digital archaeologist, unearthing the artifacts of her husband's secret life. Her background in digital design made it second nature. She navigated the shared cloud drive, a space he had forgotten she had access to, a digital attic full of his secrets. She found everything. She took screenshots of the text exchanges with Julia, dozens of them, filled with pet names and plans for a future that did not include her. She found a hidden folder of photos, Mark and this woman, laughing in a hotel room, kissing at a sun-drenched cafe. She delved into their shared credit card statements, isolating the charges for expensive jewelry she had never received and reservations at hotels he had never mentioned. She compiled it all into a single, damning digital folder. She named it Mark's Partnership Portfolio, and she learned everything she needed to know about AirDropped. It was simple, elegant, and devastatingly public. The doorbell chimed at precisely 7 o'clock, signaling the start of the evening's performance. Alara smoothed down her silk dress, took a deep breath, and composed her face into a mask of warm hospitality. When she opened the door, she was greeted by the imposing but kind-faced Mr. Sterling and his wife, a woman with gentle eyes and a genuine smile. Mr. Sterling was exactly as Mark had described, a formidable presence with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He was the personification of the old guard, a man who had built his billion-dollar empire on handshakes, integrity, and an unerring judge of character. Mark was immediately in his element, a peacock displaying his finest feathers. He clapped Mr. Sterling on the back, kissed his wife's cheek, and guided them into the living room with the effortless charm of a seasoned host. "And this," he said, gesturing dramatically toward Alara, "is my secret weapon. My rock." Alara, my love, the words, once a source of pride for her, now felt like ash in her mouth. She smiled, a perfect, practiced curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. She shook Mr. Sterling's hand, his grip firm and dry. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, sir," she said, her voice even and smooth. "Mark speaks of you constantly." As she moved through the room, pouring champagne, offering canapés, she played her role to perfection. But something was different. A new, steely light shone from her eyes, a quiet resolve that Mark, lost in his own self-congratulatory orbit, completely failed to notice. Mr. Sterling, however, was a man trained to see the details others missed. As Alara handed him a glass, he saw the faintest tremor in her hand, a vibration of suppressed energy. He saw the fleeting shadow that crossed her face when Mark placed a possessive hand on her waist. He saw a profound, contained strength in her posture, a dignity that seemed at odds with her husband's performative praise. He filed these observations away, intrigued. He sensed a story beneath the surface of this perfect evening, and he was a man who appreciated a good story. The dinner was, by all accounts, a resounding success. The conversation was lively, flowing from global markets to fine art to amusing anecdotes about travel. Alara's food was the star of the show. Each course was met with genuine murmurs of delight. Mr. Sterling was particularly impressed with the seared scallops, and Mrs. Sterling asked for the recipe for the lavender-infused honey glaze. Mark soaked it all in, beaming with pride, accepting the compliments on Alara's behalf as if they were his own. He was positively glowing, the promotion to vice president feeling less like a possibility and more like an inevitability. He saw the admiration in his boss's eyes and believed he had secured his future. As the dessert plates were cleared and coffee was served, Mr. Sterling raised his crystal brandy snifter, a warm smile on his face. The moment had arrived. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, his voice commanding the room's attention. Everyone turned to him, glasses poised. "To Mark," he began, looking directly at his protégé. "A man of undeniable ambition and immense talent. I've seen him close deals I thought were impossible. Mark's chest swelled. But as we all know, Mr. Sterling continued, his gaze softening as it shifted to Alara. True success is never a solo act. It is built on a strong foundation, on a partnership of trust and support. So I toast not just to Mark, but to the partnership that makes his success possible. To Alara, who has so clearly built a beautiful and impressive home and life. To partnership. They all raised their glasses. To partnership, they echoed. Mark, triumphant, turned to Alara and gave her a wide, possessive smile. It was the smile of a man who believed he owned the world, and her along with it. This was her cue. She met his gaze, and for the first time all night, she let her own smile reach her eyes. It was not warm. It was enigmatic, chilling, a prelude to the storm. Beneath the polished mahogany table, her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hand was perfectly steady as it closed around the cool, smooth case of her phone. The performance was over. The reckoning was about to begin. As the glasses were gently lowered back to the table, a soft murmur of contentment filled the room. But Alara's voice, clear and resonant, sliced through the warm atmosphere like a shard of glass. To partnership, she echoed, holding her glass high. Her eyes were locked on Mr. Sterling. And to transparency. Because I believe transparency is the most important part of any partnership. Don't you agree, Mr. Sterling? The question hung in the air, pointed and unexpected. Mr. Sterling looked at her, his brow furrowed in thought, and nodded slowly. Absolutely, my dear. Without it, everything else is meaningless. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face at her interruption. Alara, darling, he began, but it was too late. Before he could utter another word, Alara's thumb moved with practiced speed beneath the table. She tapped the share icon. She selected the folder she had so carefully prepared, Mark's partnership portfolio, and in the AirDropped menu, she selected the option that would seal his fate, everyone. A series of soft, almost polite chimes rippled around the table, a digital cascade of doom. 1, 2, 3. Mark's phone, sitting beside his plate, lit up. Mr. Sterling's phone, in his breast pocket, vibrated and chimed. Mrs. Sterling, startled, looked down at her own device as it illuminated on the tablecloth. Each screen displayed the same, innocuous-looking notification. Alara would like to share photos with you. Mark froze. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a pallid mask of sheer panic. He knew instantly. His eyes, wide with a dawning, frantic horror, darted to Alara. It was no longer a look of annoyance, but of pure, unadulterated terror. Alara, he hissed, his voice a choked whisper that was somehow louder than a shout in the sudden silence. What are you doing? But his question was drowned out by the sound of Mrs. Sterling's curious tap on her screen, followed by a sharp, horrified intake of breath. Curiosity is a powerful force. While Mark was frozen in a state of panicked paralysis, Mrs. Sterling, a woman of gentle but inquisitive nature, had already tapped accept on the AirDrop request. Her eyes scanned the first image that appeared on her screen, a screenshot of a text message. Glowing with lurid affection from Julia, her hand flew to her mouth, her gasp a small, sharp sound that shattered the last vestiges of dinner party decorum. Across from her, Mr. Sterling, his expression a mixture of confusion and irritation at the disruption, frowned and did the same. He tapped accept. His face, a moment before relaxed and content, transformed. The confusion melted away, replaced by a stony, thunderous disbelief. He scrolled once, his jaw tightening. He scrolled again, and his eyes, when they lifted from the screen, were filled with a cold, terrifying rage. The images flashed across their phones in a silent, damning slideshow. The text promising a secret celebration. The hotel receipts from cities Mark had supposedly visited alone for business. And the photos, the irrefutable, intimate photos of Mark and a smiling, younger woman, their arms wrapped around each other, blissfully unaware they were being immortalized for this very moment. The entire sordid narrative of his betrayal, his partnership portfolio, was laid bare upon the gleaming surface of the dinner table. Mark, finally jolted from his stupor, made a desperate lunge, trying to snatch his boss's phone, then Alara's. But it was far too late. The truth was unleashed. The silence that fell upon the room was absolute, profound, and heavy as a shroud. It was broken only by the soft, heartbroken whisper of Mrs. Sterling. "Oh, you poor dear," she murmured, her compassionate eyes fixed on Alara. Mr. Sterling slowly, deliberately, placed his phone face down on the table. He did not look at his disgraced protégé. Instead, his gaze settled on Alara. He saw not a vengeful harpy, but a woman of immense fortitude, a queen calmly toppling a corrupt regime. Then, and only then, did he turn his eyes to Mark. The contempt in that single look was enough to annihilate a man. "The meeting about your promotion is cancelled," Mr. Sterling said, his voice low and lethal. "Clean out your desk in the morning. You're finished." Mark simply crumpled. He didn't argue or protest. He sagged in his chair as if his bones had turned to dust, the charming, confident facade dissolving to reveal the small, hollow man beneath. The antagonist, so powerful just moments before, was utterly defeated, silenced by a truth he could no longer spin or deny. The air in the room was thick with the wreckage of his life. In the midst of that deafening silence, Alara stood up. Her movements were graceful, unhurried. She felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, as if a physical weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Her posture was erect, her chin held high. For the first time in a very long time, she felt entirely visible. She looked across the table, not at the shell of her husband, but at the perceptive man who had, in an instant, understood everything. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice calm and clear, utterly devoid of triumph or malice. It held only a profound, sad dignity. "Thank you for coming to our home." She gave a small, respectful nod to his wife, who looked back at her with eyes full of sorrowful understanding and immense respect. Then, without a single glance back at Mark, Alara turned and walked away. She walked out of the perfect dining room, past the beautiful flower arrangements, through the immaculate living room. She walked through the front door of the house she had so lovingly built, and she did not close it behind her. She was walking out of a life that had been a gilded cage and into the vast, unknown territory of her own future, armed with nothing but the truth and her own reclaimed worth. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But as Alara walked into the cool night air, she knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. It was about a woman who was made to feel invisible in her own life, who refused to be erased from her own story. It's about the powerful, terrifying, and liberating moment you realize that your dignity is the one foundation that can never be demolished, the one treasure that can never be taken, unless you willingly give it away. If you have ever been made to feel small, or have watched someone you love shrink in the shadow of another, share this story. Share it to remind them, and to remind yourself of the unshakable strength that lies within. Remind them that the most powerful voice they will ever have is their own. And never, ever let anyone else hold the pen that writes your story.